Jedd Fisch has left Arizona to become the head football coach of the Washington Huskies. We're going to talk about the fallout from all of that. We're also going to talk about how this can impact the Big 12 as a whole, how it can impact Arizona, and we're going to talk about how this could have been handled differently by not only Jedd Fisch, but also the Arizona administration. We're going to talk about all that right after this word from my sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out another shot of top-shelf college football content. If you're new here, do not let the West Virginia memorabilia fool you. Yes, I'm a West Virginia fan, but I also cover the Big 12. I also cover conference realignment, even though it's a West Virginia-centric channel. So be sure to subscribe if you like any of that content. Also, if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. Please share it with your friends, and please subscribe if you haven't. Help me get to that 10,000 subscriber mark. Now, let's get on with the show. Jedd Fisch leaving Arizona for Washington. We all know the story here by now. Kalen DeBoer leaving Washington or has left Washington to be the next head coach at Alabama to replace the GOAT, Nick Saban. Washington went out, had several guys they were looking at. Apparently, according to Jason Scheer, Lance Leipold was our top choice, but Lance Leipold turned the job down. Looks like they were able to land choice number 2, which was Jedd Fisch from Arizona. Now, this is not sitting well with Arizona fans. It's not even sitting well with members of the Arizona media. I'm going to leave a link in the description box to a podcast by Mr. Jason Scheer with the Wildcat Authority, which is the Arizona arm of 24/7 Sports. Jason Scheer and his wife did this podcast. It's the Wildcat Authority podcast, I believe is what it's called. I suggest after this show's over, you go listen to it because they go over some details of the events within basically the 48 hours before Jedd Fisch left. And they even came out straight out and called Jedd Fisch a liar, folks. I mean, they went after Jedd Fisch really hard in this podcast. He apparently, up until the last second, was telling his staff members, his team, the media, was telling them that he wasn't going anywhere. And Jason Scheer takes exception to that he was blatantly lied to by Jedd Fisch. They also talk about how Jedd Fisch is basically a job hopper. He's never been at a job longer than 3 years, and that was his stint in Arizona. So, Washington fans, enjoy this because it may not last long, because Jedd Fisch may be off to the next great adventure. And I'll be honest with you, when you look back at his past and how this whole thing was handled, it smells a little fishy. And yes, pun was intended there. Now, they also talk about how it was handled by the Arizona administration and how they took exception to some of that as well. But first, let's talk about the Jedd Fisch piece. Yes, the part about him reportedly or allegedly lying is one thing. But then let's look at how he handled it with his team. Reports are coming out that his team meeting with his players was extremely, extremely short, and that the players are flat out pissed about it. Let's look at Jason Scheer's tweet here that he put out about this. The original tweet was from someone named Jacob Saliga. He said, Jedd Fisch's team meeting with Arizona players and staff lasted for 3 minutes and will be heading to the airport to get on a plane for Seattle. Jason Scheer requoted that and said the following: "Can confirm it was only 3 minutes long. Players are furious." Now, in his podcast, Jason talks about how basically, in a nutshell, Jedd Fisch walked in the room. He's told his players, guys, I'm not going to give you some big rah-rah speech. I'm leaving for Washington. And that was the end of the meeting. I mean, imagine being a player who's put your whole heart and soul into playing for this guy, and that's all he has to say. And that's after him telling you about 24 or 48 hours earlier that he wasn't going anywhere. Can't sit well with you. Cannot sit well with you if you're one of those players. Now, did it upset him enough to where many of those players won't follow him to Washington. Time will tell on that. We all know he's likely going to try to get some of his better players to Washington with him, probably Noah Fafita, some others. We'll see if that actually happens or not. If they're upset with him enough, they may not want to follow him to Washington. They may not want to play for this guy again, but we'll see. We all know it happens all the time. The most notable one was probably Caleb Williams leaving Oklahoma to follow Lincoln Riley to USC. We'll know if Fafita follow Jedd Fisch to Washington. Time will tell. Now, also, when you look at the way the administration at Arizona handled this, also makes you scratch your head and makes you think that something is fishy here. Now, again, pun intended. With that last name, man, you got to, if you don't use that pun, I don't know what's wrong with you. But anyway, the administration of Arizona, were they really trying hard enough to keep Jedd Fisch? One of the things that Jason and his wife mentioned in their podcast, the AD at Arizona was in Pullman, Washington, and never made it back from Pullman. He was in Pullman to watch the Arizona basketball team play, I guess, a day or two earlier. I guess he got stuck in Pullman because of flight issues. So he was never even able to meet with Jedd Fisch in person to discuss this, to negotiate. It all had to be done, I guess, over Zoom or over the telephone. And one thing Jason mentioned and his wife mentioned in the podcast, and I kind of agree with, was this not important enough for him to figure out a way to get back to Tucson? Could he not have rented a car and drove to Tucson? Could he not have found another flight to get on to fly to Tucson? Flying from Washington to Tucson apparently was not impossible, because Washington's AD was able to fly to Tucson, met Jedd Fisch at his house to sign his new contract. And they put that on Twitter as well. So that really doesn't make the Arizona AD look very good. Now, another thing that doesn't make Arizona as a whole look good is the tweet by Brett McMurphy that I'm going to share with you right now. This is Brett McMurphy from Action Network HQ. He says, Jedd Fisch accepts Washington job, sources told Action Network HQ. Arizona has team meetings within next hour. Arizona had opportunity to get Fisch new deal, but it wasn't a priority for school, source said. And it goes on to talk about Washington's schedule next year, but I'm going to read that to you again. That was the key part of this tweet. Arizona had opportunity to get Fisch new deal, but it wasn't a priority for the school. Now, it's my understanding, according to Jason Shear's reporting, that Washington is paying Jedd Fisch about $7.5 million a year with a 7-year deal. I've also read, I don't know if it was Jason or someone else, that said that's going to more than double his salary of what he was making in Arizona. Now, I know Arizona's having financial problems. I get all that. But could you not at least make an effort? And maybe they did. But could you not at least get close to $7 million? Could you not offer him $5 million? I mean, the guy's got your football program at heights they haven't been in years. They're going into the Big 12 with 18 of 22 starters set to come back. Favorite to win the league. The future looks bright as ever for Arizona football. And you have no priority to keep him? That, if I'm an Arizona fan, I've got a problem with that. I have a big problem with that. How will this, I mentioned how we all know how it's going to impact Arizona. We talked about that briefly. Yes, you're losing your top guy. You're losing a very good head coach who's got this program humming. But how will it impact the Big 12? I think this could also have a negative impact on the Big 12. Now, selfishly, as a West Virginia fan, we have to go to Arizona next year to play the Wildcats. This gives us a better chance to win that game, number one. And two, it gives West Virginia a better chance to compete for the Big 12 title, in my opinion, because not only are you losing your coach, you're probably going to lose a lot of your top players as well. But looking at the conference as a whole, I think this is bad for the league, because Arizona was kind of the big shining light that most of the country was looking at as the favorite to win the league next year. They were a team that that could get into the college football playoff, potentially make some noise with that talented roster. We saw them beat Oklahoma, in the Alamo Bowl. Now, I know it wasn't an Oklahoma team at full strength. I get all that. But nonetheless, they did win the Alamo Bowl over Oklahoma, a blue blood program. So the future looks really bright for Arizona, and thus was helping the Big 12's perception. We all know the national perception of the Big 12 is not always great. And if one of the teams that are expected to be carrying the torch for the league loses their coach and potentially loses most of their roster, and they have to take a step back or maybe 2 or 3 steps back, it can't be good for the league, in my opinion. It can't be good for the league. But nonetheless, I'm still looking forward to a strong 2024 football season. I want to hear your thoughts on this matter, Couz's Corner family. Arizona fans, let me know in the comments section. What are your thoughts on the way your coach, former coach Jedd Fisch, handled this situation? Who would you like to bring in as head coach of your program? Who do you want to lead this Arizona Wildcat team? Now, if you want to help support me here financially, help me keep the lights on, there are several ways you can do that. Number one, you see these names scrolling along the bottom of the screen? Those are 4 of my VIP channel members. If you want to become a VIP channel member like these fine folks, all you have to do is press the join button right below. If there's not a join button there, go into the description box. There'll be a link to get you to my page where you can join the channel and become a VIP member. It's only $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month if you want a few extra perks. And one of those perks that all members get is the shout-outs. Right now, I want to give a shout-out to my newest member, Neil Brown's favorite naysayer. Also want to give a shout-out to Hall of Fame College Football, Phil the Masters, and Bill G. And speaking of Hall of Fame College Football, you can go check out his channel. He's an Oklahoma fan, but covers all of college football over on his show. I appreciate them for being channel members, and you can join that club by hitting the join button once again. Now, other ways you can support me. I have merch, guys, and right now, if you order merch from my store by January the 16th, you get free standard shipping on anything you purchase until January the 16th. It's cold out there in a lot of places around the country. Get yourself a Couz's Corner hoodie. Get a beanie to cover up your bald head if you're bald like me. If you don't like hoodies or beanies, get yourself a T-shirt. If you want something a little less expensive, get you a ball cap or a coffee mug. All kinds of items to choose from with several different designs. If you don't want my channel logo, I have the West Virginia versus the World design. I have the Jack Daniels West Virginia design. I have several other designs as well. That if you're not a fan of West Virginia or live in West Virginia, there's other things to choose from. So go check it out. Check out the link in my description box or click one of the photos of the items below, and that'll get you into the store as well. Last but not least, if you want to not only support me, but also support your favorite team, check out the On It NIL trading cards. Get NIL trading cards of your favorite team if they're available. If you use the link in my description box to do your shopping for those cards, I'll get a small commission, and the student athletes get 60% of the profits. So support your team and support me at the same time with On It NIL trading cards. And guys, real quick, don't forget I do have a website as well, Couz'sCorner.com. It's an easy way for you to get in touch with me. Go to my site, click the contact button or whatever it says there. Send me an email. I'll do my best to respond. You can also find some of my YouTube videos, all of my audio-only podcasts, and some really good blog posts that have been written over there by myself and some other writers about West Virginia sports, if you're interested in that. If you want to watch another video related to the Big 12, check out this video right here. I appreciate you tuning into this episode. Have a top shelf day, and don't forget to cue Country Roads.